She never saw the punch coming. 1 second she was reaching for her ID, the next she was on the ground, blood on her lip, headlights glaring in her eyes. The rookie cop towered over her, barking, "Stop resisting," as her groceries spilled across the pavement. And just as he reached for his cuffs, a voice behind him shouted, "Riker, do you even know who that is?" Hi, everyone. Today we're diving into a true story that cuts deep into what happens when power is given without wisdom, when assumptions become weapons, and when identity becomes a target. A woman exhausted from a long day of serving her city walks into a 24-hour convenience store for some groceries. 10 minutes later, she's on the ground, blood on her lip, with a fist print on her face and the man who hit her another cop. But here's the thing. She's not just any woman. She's the chief of police and the rookie who swung at her. He had no idea who he just put his hands on. This could happen to anyone, even you. So before we dive into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from and what time is it where you are? Let's begin. Yvonne Harris wasn't looking to be anyone's boss tonight. Not a leader, not a symbol, and definitely not Chief Harris of Precinct 8. Not at 12:23 a.m. in an oversized hoodie, sweatpants that had seen better days, and a ball cap pulled down to her eyebrows. Her badge was locked in the glove compartment. Her service weapon was back home. She was just Yvonne, 46, bone-tired with a headache blooming behind her right eye and no creamer left in the fridge. The corner store sat on the edge of an old industrial strip in Dayton, Ohio. It was one of those places with flickering lights and a half-dead soda cooler humming too loud. But it was open, and that was all that mattered. She pulled her Chevy Impala into a space beneath a busted streetlight, grabbed her keys and wallet, and stepped out into the cool spring night. Inside the store, it was quiet. The cashier, a sleepy-eyed teenager named Vince, barely looked up from his phone, just gave her a little nod. Yvonne grabbed a small plastic basket and moved down the aisles like someone on autopilot. A bottle of vanilla creamer, a pack of trail mix, 2 bottles of water, a bag of baked chips, enough to survive the next 12 hours. She paid in cash, gave Vince a tired smile, and stepped back into the night air. Her body ached from 12 hours of back-to-back meetings, interviews, and a last-minute crisis involving a missing child. But for the first time all day, she exhaled. And then she saw the cruiser. It was parked 2 spots over from her Impala, lights off, engine humming low, windows tinted. At first, she thought nothing of it. Cops sat in parking lots all the time, especially rookies looking to fill time on the midnight shift. But when the door opened and a young white officer stepped out, she knew what was coming. He walked with the kind of posture that said, "I'm here to make a point." Broad chest, squared shoulders, hand resting just near his belt. His uniform was spotless. His face still held that fresh-out-the-academy shine. He was maybe 25, maybe 26, and he had that look like he'd spent the last half hour convincing himself something shady was going on, and now he was ready to prove it. "Evening," he called out. Yvonne didn't answer right away. She set the basket down in her trunk and began loading items one at a time. "You out here alone?" he asked, voice sharper now. She finally looked up. "Just got some groceries." He squinted. "You live around here?" She raised an eyebrow. "Do you ask everyone that, or just me?" That stopped him, just for a second. Then he adjusted his stance. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. You were standing around for a while." "I've been out here for less than 6 minutes," Yvonne said flatly. "You watching a clock, ma'am? Do you have ID?" Now her patience flickered, but she still reached into her hoodie pocket, pulled out her wallet, and handed him her license. He didn't glance at the name, didn't read the address, just held it up to the dim overhead light, and I stared at her photo like it might confess to something. "Says you live in Oakwood," he noted. "That's across town." 10-minute drive," she replied. "My fridge is empty. This place is open." His eyes scanned her again, head to toe, like he was still trying to reconcile what she looked like with the idea of innocence. "You sure you're not waiting for someone? Maybe doing a handoff?" That's when she sighed, loud enough for him to hear it. "No," she said. "I'm not doing a handoff. I'm doing groceries." He stepped closer. "Mind if I take a look inside your vehicle?" "I do mind," she answered. "You don't have cause. You don't have a warrant. You've got my ID. That should be enough." "You seem defensive," he said, narrowing his eyes. "I'm tired," she corrected. "Not defensive." Just done playing games. The shift happened fast. One moment he was posturing, the next he was reaching. Ma'am, I need you to step away from the vehicle, he ordered, hand reaching out to grab her wrist. Yvonne flinched back. Don't touch me. Stop resisting, he snapped. I'm not resisting, she said firmly. I'm asserting my rights. But he didn't care. He lunged again. This time his grip was harder, yanking her toward him. Yvonne pushed back, stumbled against the rear bumper of her car, and before she could get her footing, he hit her. A closed fist punch to the side of her head. The force of it spun her. Her shoulder slammed into the trunk. The basket spilled. Creamer cracked open on the asphalt. Chips skidded into the gutter. Yvonne dropped to one knee. The world tilted. Her vision blurred. And just across the lot, a woman at the ice machine, hidden until now, raised her phone and started recording. Officer Drew Riker stood over her, breathing hard, chest puffed. You want to make this difficult, he barked. Yvonne didn't answer. She couldn't. Her ears rang. Her hand pressed to the pavement. That's when the backup arrived. 2 cruisers came in fast. Sirens off, but lights flashing red and blue across the scene. Doors flung open. Out stepped Officer Kendrick Cole, tall, dark-skinned, late 30s with a calm authority. Beside him, Officer Elena Ramirez, short, precise, alert. They took one look. A black woman on the ground, face swollen, groceries scattered. Rookie cop with fists still clenched. Kendrick's voice cut through the air. Riker, what the hell did you do? She was resisting, Riker said defensively. Wouldn't answer questions. She got aggressive. Kendrick didn't move, just stared. Then his gaze shifted to Yvonne. Their eyes met. His own eyes widened. Chief Harris Riker froze. When Elena stepped forward, her mouth slightly open. That's Chief Yvonne Harris, Precinct 8. Riker blinked. No way. She didn't say... She didn't have to, Kendrick growled. You should have asked her name. And just like that, the badge on Riker's chest began to feel a whole lot heavier. Officer Drew Riker took one step back as if distance could somehow undo the impact of his actions. The words Chief Harris still rang in the air like a warning shot. Kendrick's face didn't shift much, but the temperature in the parking lot had dropped 10 degrees. Riker was staring at Yvonne now, like he'd just run a red light straight into oncoming traffic. Yvonne pressed one hand to the side of her face, her skin hot and throbbing. Blood trickled from her bottom lip, and her hoodie sleeve came back wet when she wiped it. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Kendrick was already moving toward her hand on his radio. We need EMS at 6112 Emerson Avenue. Officer assaulted. Victim is Chief Yvonne Harris. Immediate response requested. That one sentence said it all. Riker's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Elena Ramirez gave him a long, slow look and walked right past him, kneeling beside Yvonne without a word. Her fingers were quick and careful, checking for swelling, shining a small flashlight into each eye. You might be concussed, Chief, she murmured. Try to keep still. Yvonne let out a breath. I've been worse, but I'm not moving until someone gets a statement from that girl over by the ice machine. She saw the whole thing. Ramirez nodded and rose to retrieve the witness. Kendrick stayed planted in front of Riker. You put your hands on someone without cause, he asked quietly. Didn't introduce yourself. Didn't explain why you were approaching. And then you swung on her? I didn't know who she was, Riker stammered. She wasn't in uniform. She didn't say, you don't get to hit someone because they weren't wearing a badge, Kendrick snapped. You assaulted a civilian. That's what you saw. But she wouldn't show ID. She did show ID. She cooperated. You ignored it. Riker looked like a dam cracking under pressure. She was in a hoodie. I thought, yeah, Kendrick cut him off. You thought. Just then a paramedic unit pulled in. Red and white lights lit up the side of the building, painting everything in flashes of emergency. 2 medics jumped out, moving toward Yvonne. Ramirez returned with the woman from the ice machine, who had already sent the video to 3 news outlets and a civil rights attorney in Cincinnati. One of the medics gently helped Yvonne sit up. Ma'am, we're going to check your vitals and take you in for a CT scan. That impact was too close to your temple. I can walk, Yvonne muttered. You shouldn't, the medic replied. Let's do this by the book. Kendrick leaned down as they loaded her onto the stretcher. Chief, I'm calling Deputy Chief Evans. Do you want to file the report now or wait? She looked at Riker, whose face had gone pale. Let him sit in it a while, she said quietly. He needs to feel this moment. Kendrick nodded. We've got his body cam and the witness video. He won't bury this. As they lifted the stretcher into the ambulance, Yvonne turned her head and locked eyes with Riker one last time. You ever wonder what happens when you get it wrong? She said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut steel. You just found out. The doors closed. Inside the ambulance, it was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment and the muted voices of the medics. Yvonne stared at the ceiling, the white plastic panels swimming in and out of focus. Her body hurt, but not as much as the truth of what had just happened, because she'd seen this before. 35 years ago, her older brother Darnell had been tackled in a grocery store parking lot by an off-duty cop. Said he looked suspicious, walking too slow, with his hands in his coat pockets. Darnell was 17. He left with 2 broken ribs and a lifetime of mistrust. Yvonne had been 11. She remembered her mother crying all night, remembered the way the police report said non-compliant suspect and minimal force applied. She remembered Darnell's silence after that, how he started crossing streets when he saw a cruiser coming, how his laugh got quieter, how he stopped wearing hoodies. Now, decades later, Yvonne had been the one on the pavement. And the punch didn't just hurt her face, it hurt her spirit. Because if she, a chief with a badge and a title and a record of clean service, could be mistaken for a threat just for being tired in a hoodie, what chance did the people without titles have? The medic gently tapped her arm. Chief, we're pulling in now. You doing okay? She gave him a look. How do you define okay? He nodded solemnly. Fair. They wheeled her in through a quiet corridor in Miami Valley Hospital. A nurse named Alexis took over, soft-spoken mid-30s and sharp-eyed. She cleaned the cut near Yvonne's lip and checked for swelling. You're lucky, she said. Another inch, he could have fractured your cheekbone. Yeah, Yvonne muttered. Real lucky. They settled her into a private room while the CT scan was processed. At 2:12 a.m., the door creaked open again. In stepped Deputy Chief Martha Evans' sturdy frame, short gray hair, clipboard under one arm, and eyes that had seen decades of politics and pain. She didn't ask what happened. She'd already seen the video. I came as soon as I got the call, she said, sitting down beside the bed. How bad is it? Concussion, bruised ribs, damaged pride. Martha set down her clipboard. Internal Affairs is activated. Riker's off duty. His body cam confirms everything. So does the witness video. It's not going to go away. Good, Yvonne said flatly. I need to ask, Martha continued. Do you want to make a statement tonight or after some rest? Yvonne stared at the ceiling. I'll speak to the media tomorrow. Press is already circling. Witness footage hit the wires 15 minutes ago. By morning, it'll be national. Then they'll know, Yvonne said. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a mindset. Martha leaned forward. What do you want done? A full audit, Yvonne said without pause. Every use of force report from the past 2 years. Full transparency. And I want a civilian oversight board, not a PR stunt. A real one. With teeth. Martha nodded slowly. You'll take some hits for this. Let them come. You're not just a chief anymore, she said. After tomorrow, you'll be a symbol. Yvonne looked her in the eye. Then let's make sure that symbol means something. By sunrise, the video had gone viral. A grainy clip filmed from behind the ice machine showed a black woman hooded calm. Cooperative being yanked, shoved, and punched by a white officer twice her size. And then the shift, the backup. The stunned silence and the stunned rookie freezing in place as another officer uttered the words, "That's Chief Harris." It played on loop across morning news segments. Twitter boiled over. Facebook feeds flooded. Hashtags took flight. Anar, Chief Harris, Marsh Justice in Dayton. Ganara, Hooshes shouldn't matter, but it did. But for Yvonne Harris, the world didn't move fast enough. She sat in the hospital room fully dressed, now dark jeans, crisp blouse, a lightweight blazer, no badge visible. Her left cheek throbbed and her lower lip still carried a slice of dried blood the nurse had missed. She didn't bother fixing it. Let them see it. Deputy Chief Martha Evans returned with an update. Press is gathering outside the precinct. Media vans, protesters too. We've confirmed Riker's been suspended without pay. IA is already combing his report history. Yvonne slid her phone across the table. It was open to a clip of an anchor speaking solemnly over the parking lot video. You think this will be enough, she asked. A few days of outrage, then business as usual. No, Martha said. Not unless you do something with it. Yvonne nodded slowly. Then let's go. 30 minutes later, she stepped out of the hospital and into a sea of lenses. She wasn't wearing sunglasses. Didn't bother covering the bruise. Her walk was steady, controlled, and when she stopped in front of the cameras, she didn't need a script. My name is Yvonne Harris. I serve as Chief of Police for Precinct 8 in Dayton, Ohio. And last night I was assaulted in a parking lot by one of our own. The murmurs started. Camera shutters clicked. Reporters leaned in. I was off duty, in casual clothes, no badge, no uniform. Just a tired woman trying to buy groceries after a long day. And I was seen as a threat. She let that sit. What happened to me is not unique. It is not rare. And the only reason you're hearing about it is because of who I am. That should make you furious. A reporter asked, "Are you pressing charges?" I am. Because if I won't, who will? What happened last night was not a misunderstanding. It was a decision. Rooted in bias, fed by assumption, and executed with force. Another reporter called out, "What changes are coming to the department?" Yvonne took a breath. We're launching a full internal audit of every use of force report filed in the past 24 months. Additionally, we are establishing a civilian oversight committee, independent, empowered, and involved. Not just a board for show, one that reviews incidents, interviews officers, and makes disciplinary recommendations with teeth. The questions flew at her, now fast and overlapping. She raised a hand and brought silence back. I didn't come out here to be the face of something, but now I am. And that means I have a responsibility to use this moment, not to protect an image, but to protect people. Inside the precinct, the air was tense. Officers huddled in clusters, some watching the press conference on TV, others staring through the blinds. Officer Kendrick Cole stood by the front desk, arms crossed. She's not just speaking for herself, he said to Officer Ramirez. She's speaking for every time one of us looked the other way. Ramirez nodded. And every time someone like Riker thought a badge made him untouchable. In a dim office 2 floors up, Drew Riker sat alone, stripped of his uniform, body cam, and service weapon. The weight of the silence around him was crushing. His phone vibrated with messages, some from his lawyer, some from former academy classmates, unsure whether to offer support or back away. He didn't answer any of them. The image wouldn't leave his mind. Her face, the shock when he hit her, the blood, the stillness after. And then Kendrick's voice like a blade. That's Chief Harris. He tried to replay it differently in his head. Maybe she'd been uncooperative. Maybe she'd mouthed off. Maybe she hadn't responded fast enough, but every version felt like a lie stacked on top of failure. Later that afternoon, the call came through. Yvonne answered after one ring. Chief Harris Riker said quietly, "It's Drew, Officer Riker. I wanted to say I'm sorry." She didn't respond right away. The silence stretched. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say it. I didn't know who you were, but that's not the point. I made assumptions. I escalated when I shouldn't have. And He exhaled hard. "I crossed a line." Yvonne finally spoke. Her voice was even but cold. "What you saw that night wasn't about me. It was about the picture in your head of who gets to be safe and who doesn't. And the minute I didn't match that picture, you stopped listening." "I didn't see you," he whispered. "No, you didn't. But I wasn't invisible. I was inconvenient. That's different." "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "Good," she replied, "because this isn't about forgiveness. It's about accountability." He said nothing. "You assaulted someone in a parking lot, Officer Riker," she continued. "And the only reason you're not in a cell right now is because I believe this system still has room to grow. But you're going to answer for what you did. In court, in hearings, in the mirror." "I understand." "No," she said. "You don't. Not yet. But maybe someday you will." She ended the call. By evening, the department's official social media pages posted her statement in full. Support poured in from across the country, police reform advocates, clergy, retired officers, and regular citizens who had lived a version of what Yvonne endured. But for Yvonne, none of it felt like victory. It felt like obligation, because every message that said, "Thank you for standing up," was matched with one that whispered, "I thought it was just me." The next morning, Yvonne stood alone in the precinct's community conference room, staring out the tall glass windows at the drizzle sweeping across the parking lot. Her face was less swollen now, the purpling bruise at her cheek fading from plum to deep mauve, but the stiffness remained in her neck and shoulder, a quiet echo of the night that refused to leave. Behind her, chairs were being arranged. A podium was being set. Reporters, city officials, clergy members, and neighborhood watch leaders trickled in, filling the room slowly. This wasn't a press conference. It was something more fragile, a community forum, an invitation to conversation and scrutiny. Deputy Chief Martha Evans approached from behind with a small folder in hand. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked. "You could have kept this behind closed doors." Yvonne turned, meeting her gaze. "Behind closed doors is where the rot spreads." Martha nodded and stepped aside as Yvonne approached the podium. The crowd quieted. The cameras were rolling, but Yvonne didn't look at them. She looked at the people, the faces in the folding chairs. The woman from the housing authority, the pastor from Zion Baptist, a local barbershop owner, and 4 off-duty officers sitting at the back, arms folded but eyes open. "I'm not here today as a victim," she began, "and I'm not just here as your chief. I'm here as someone who understands what it feels like to be seen as a threat before being seen as a person." She paused, letting that sink in. "What happened to me is not isolated. And if I hadn't been who I am, if there hadn't been a camera, if the officers who showed up hadn't known me, this story would have gone a very different way. That's the truth." Someone in the front row, a woman with silver braids and tired eyes, nodded slowly. "We say we protect and serve," Yvonne continued, "but sometimes we forget the serve part. Sometimes we forget to see. And that has to change." She opened the folder Martha had handed her. "As of today, I'm initiating the following: first, a full audit of every use of force incident logged in Precinct 8 over the past 2 years. Those records will be reviewed independently by a joint task team of internal officers and external civilian representatives." There were murmurs, some skeptical, some approving. "Second, this department is establishing a civilian oversight committee, not a token group, a governing body with review authority and public transparency. Members will be drawn from neighborhood associations, churches, schools, and small businesses. Real voices." Yvonne looked up. "If that makes some of you uncomfortable, good. That means we're getting somewhere." The crowd was quiet but electric. A man raised his hand. A former city councilman turned activist. "An Officer Riker." "He's on unpaid suspension," Yvonne replied, "and I've filed formal charges for assault. There will be no backroom deals, no desk duty in another precinct. What he did will follow him." "Will it follow the system that let him get there?" the man pressed. Yvonne didn't flinch. "That's what I'm here to change." The conversation shifted into dialogue, then community members airing frustration, officers sharing concerns, pastors offering ideas, and through it all, Yvonne stood steady, listening, engaging, holding the space open. Later, as the room emptied, Martha approached again. "You just put yourself in the crosshairs. I know. Some folks are already saying you made this political." Yvonne smiled faintly. "Only people who benefit from silence think truth is political." That evening, she returned home to find her phone loaded with messages. Dozens. Some were from other police chiefs, a few from journalists. One from a mother in Indianapolis who simply wrote, "My daughter saw you on TV and said, 'She looks like me. Thank you.'" There was also one voicemail. "No caller ID." She pressed play. "Chief Harris. This is Drew Riker." There was a pause, a breath. Then his voice, unsure and soft. "I know you don't owe me anything, and I probably have no right to say this, but I want you to know, I watched the footage again, not just the body cam, but what the witness recorded, and for the first time I saw what everyone else saw. Not a suspect, a person." Another pause. "I saw my own mother's face in yours, and it scared the hell out of me." Yvonne sat down at her kitchen table, letting the voice wash over her. "I know saying I'm sorry doesn't fix it, but I am. For what I did, for what I let myself believe, for how fast I let fear dress itself up as authority. I don't know if I'll keep my badge. Maybe I don't deserve to. But I hope someday I can be the kind of officer who sees first, who listens, Thank you for not burying it, even if it cost you more than you let on. Click. Yvonne didn't move for a long time. The voicemail hung in the air, fragile and unfinished. And yet, she didn't delete it. Because accountability wasn't about revenge. It was about reflection. About putting a mirror in front of the broken parts and asking what could be different next time. And maybe, just maybe, there could be a next time worth showing up for. The next morning, the rain had stopped. The streets of Dayton gleamed in the weak spring sunlight, the puddles along the sidewalk reflecting the slow-moving clouds above. Yvonne stood once again on the precinct steps, this time in uniform. Her badge glinted in the morning light, her collar crisp, her posture straight, despite the dull ache still humming across her shoulder. Reporters were waiting, but not the same crowd from before. Today there were more citizens than cameras. Teachers, mail carriers, clergy in long coats. A group of young people from the local community college stood together, arms folded, faces expectant. Yvonne stepped to the podium with no paper, no teleprompter, just presence. "I want to be clear," she said. "What happened to me doesn't make me special. It makes me a statistic with a badge. And the badge didn't stop it. That's what matters." She let the words land. "I've heard from people all over the country these past 2 days. Stories that mirror mine, except theirs didn't end with backup or cameras or a press conference. Some of them didn't end with survival." A soft rustle passed through the crowd. Someone sniffled. "This isn't about firing one officer. It's about rebuilding trust where there's been none. It's about making sure that the next young cop understands that wearing a uniform doesn't make you right. It makes you responsible." She took a breath and looked across the faces in front of her. "I wear this badge knowing it doesn't protect me from bias. It never has. But I wear it because someone has to show that authority doesn't have to mean abuse. That justice isn't about control, it's about care." The crowd was silent but still. "We've already begun the use of force audit. The oversight committee will be seated next week. And moving forward, every officer in this department, rookie to veteran, will undergo quarterly bias training led by community partners, not just internal affairs." She stepped away from the podium, then not waiting for applause. She wasn't here for clapping. She was here for change. As she stepped down the stairs, she was met by Officer Kendrick Cole. "Powerful words, Chief," he said, falling into step beside her. "They better be more than words," she replied. "They will be," Kendrick nodded. "Not because they came from a podium, but because they came from pavement." That afternoon, she returned to her office, a small, tidy space with a window facing west. On her desk sat a folded note left by Officer Ramirez. Just one sentence scrawled in blue ink. "You reminded us why we joined." Later that evening, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, Yvonne sat alone in her car outside the old 24-hour corner store. The broken streetlight still flickered. The ice machine still hummed. The asphalt still bore faint traces of the milk that spilled when she hit the ground. She rolled the window down, letting the cool air in. A young woman stepped out of the store hoodie, pulled tight earbuds and phone in hand. Yvonne watched her for a moment, not with suspicion, but with recognition. She knew that feeling, of being seen, of being misjudged, of wondering if tonight would be the night someone's fear outweighed her humanity. But tonight that young woman walked to her car and drove off uninterrupted, and that in its own quiet way felt like the beginning of something. Yvonne didn't need to be a hero. She didn't need to be the symbol everyone thought she was becoming. She just needed to be present, to listen, to lead, and to ensure that what happened in a dark parking lot on a rainy night would not be forgotten the next time someone reached for a badge or a fist. It's a hard thing, isn't it, to realize that even with titles, uniforms, and authority, there are moments when you are still reduced to the assumptions someone else makes. Yvonne Harris knew that, but she also knew that silence wouldn't fix it. Silence wouldn't protect the next woman, the next brother, the next hoodie mistaken for a threat. This story isn't just about one rookie officer or one punch thrown. It's about all the small, unchecked moments that build up to something bigger. It's about how power left unchallenged turns into harm, and how justice, when embraced with humility, can turn that harm into healing. Yvonne didn't respond with rage. She responded with clarity, with purpose, with reforms that didn't center herself but centered the people who never get press conferences, who never get recognized, who never get believed. And maybe that's the lesson we carry with us tonight, that real justice doesn't shout. It acts, it reforms, it creates room for accountability, and it refuses to let fear guide policy. So wherever you are, if this story stirred something in you, take that feeling and don't let it fade. Let it sharpen your awareness. Let it soften your judgment. Let it call you to speak up when silence is the easy road. Because the next time someone like Yvonne walks into a corner store at midnight, all they should be met with is peace.